see there from about 2006 to 2008. And I was trying to find video on a really notable story. Yes, we don't know, because I like it when they do that.
So do I. There's more footage coming up in the episode, the last episode of the season, which is next week, which is a baby kidnapping that has a happy ending.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of footage in that one. And I think there may be some in the show, I'm going to show you this. I haven't seen it, because I had to move down on Earth to get it on this boat. I got it before Discovery had it.
Did you?
Yeah, this boat. So I don't know, I think there may be, but unfortunately, Annie's right. They throw things away, they destroy things, they unformat them, they don't work anymore, nobody knows how to plan them. So there's been a lot of scenes where she and I were together. Usually she was standing there talking to me and doing this.
No, I mean, seriously.
I remember those days.
All right, so we're going to go back to our format. We have Gerald is going to help with the outside of the room. And also, someone who's going to give a break to, has been working all day on these microphones is Michael Rollins here. So thank you, Michael, for that. Also, we just got this, Lawrence Stevens, are you in the room? We found your card.
That's a black card.
Okay. All right. So who has a question for either Ann and or Lieutenant Joe?
We have one right here.
Joe.
Vantage. Yes, you mentioned earlier about a movie that you were going to be in.
It's out already. It's a Netflix original.
Could you talk about that as well?
It's a Netflix original movie. It's called Handsome, as in good looking. It's a police comedy, which I play myself. So I'm the serious part. And Jeff Garland wrote, directed, and produced this movie for Netflix. And it's a comedy about a detective in Los Angeles whose name is Handsome. And he is a pretty good detective, and he's horrible in his personal life. It's Jeff Garland humor, which you either like him or you dislike him. There's no middle of the road with Garland. But a lot of people love this movie, and it's got Katie Cuoco from The Big Bang Theory, little blonde in it. And it's pretty funny. And the point of the thing was that all the police, the LAPD, that's the humor part, can't figure out this really obvious murder. And so the first time I appear in the movie, you hear my voice come through the front door of a mansion in Hollywood. And I say, you do know it's the boyfriend, don't you? And everybody stops and everybody turns and looks at the door, and I step into the frame. And Garland says, Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I'm supposed to be his hero. And I said, Detective Handsome, you know what I mean? And then we do an interplay, he and I, where I'm giving him a bad time about how stupid he is, you know. And it goes on from there. It's pretty funny. And then when we arrest the guy, there's some interplay with that guy that we can't discuss with children in the room. But it's pretty funny too. So.
When is that supposed to air?
It started on in May. It's on Netflix. It's streaming on Netflix right now. Yeah, it's done pretty well. So.
Okay, we have Melissa from Miami.
Hey Joe, I'm a big fan too of me and Mike, and I have a question. You said that you really enjoyed being a detective. You're obviously very good at it. Do you think you would enjoy it now with all the rights and all the lawsuits and all this stuff that goes on now?
Of course, we have it done too. I've been sued for a total of $30 million in my career. Nobody ever collected. My daughter was in high school and I got sued once for $7 million in civil rights case. And I was served at my front door by a United States Marshal. And he rings the doorbell and I answer the door and it's a U.S. Marshal and he hands me this document that says the United States of America versus Joseph B. Kenda. You read that and you go, wow, you're trying to make the whole country mad. You know? And he said, you've been duly served. Okay, thanks. You know, he walks away. My daughter's in high school, so is my son. They're only 18 months apart. And she says, Dad, what are we going to do if we lose? It's just serious, you know what I say. Well, it's a simple plan, Chris. I pay $1 a week for 7 million weeks. I never lost, I never did anything wrong, and I told my kids, your father didn't do anything wrong. This is an exercise in somebody trying to get money out of the city of Colorado. That's all it is. I went to federal court for 3 years and everything was dismissed. But you know, I've been sued a lot, and all the time. It's the nature of it. It doesn't, people say, well, it's worse now. No, it isn't, it's the same. It's more widely reported, there are more news outlets than there is news. So everybody's on, you know, on the TV, on the radio, everybody's going crazy, all trying to make money.
Well, you know, and I jump in there too, because one of the things that has changed about news, it was not this way when I first met in '92. The 24-hour feeding of the news piece is just incredible, and it is money. News, believe it or not, is very inexpensive to produce. You know, he told you what this show costs. News is a cash cow. You can produce it for so little money. But you really, I think if you were at trouble about running a station, you could employ enough reporters. And you don't want everything to be investigated when you've got people burn out. We're all kind of burn out as it is. I mean, all of us as viewers. But what has become the trend is they actually are not hiring in proportion as many journalists as they did. They're hiring people that were aides to congressmen, worked in various industries, worked in the companies that crunch numbers. And what they do is, and we all saw this, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you were on, we also saw this in last election cycle. They sit around and they talk about what they think will happen. That is different than news. News is the gathering and reporting of facts without personal interjection. And that has really changed. And it's changed because it's cheap. You can sell a ton of ads with not a lot of input.
The standard line today in the news, irrespective of who the producer is, can more be done? How many times have you heard that?
Or
can more be done? We're going to ask you questions because we don't have any answers. Maybe you do. We'll ask you a question. Can more be done? The answer to that is very simple. Of course more can be done. Who's going to do the more? And more importantly, who's going to pay for it?
the other one that makes me nuts, and I can't tell you how many times, I probably do this 25 times a week. What do you make of that?
Right.
You know, Robert Siegel, the old NPR reporter, he just retired, and he said, you know, my education in journalism was not street corner talk about what you make of something or what you think might happen. It's getting to know the subject, interviewing people on both sides, and then presenting their viewpoints. It's really not your, I don't care what a 23-year-old has to make of something. I want to hear what the people in charge say they're doing and why.
Correct. Now, I think you should tell the crowd about the first time you met.
You gotta start. You gotta start.
This was an episode where a guy said, when a guy's a mental patient and he's on medication, he's done okay for a long time, he's married and he's done okay. Drives a dump truck, pretty harmless guy, and he takes his meds and it kind of keeps him fairly level, you know, and he can have a productive life. And one day, for whatever reason, this all comes unraveled.
Right.
And he turns absolutely gray, and his boss says, what is the matter? You look awful. I gotta go home. The owner of the company is so distressed by his appearance, let me give you a ride home. He didn't want him to drive. He took him home. And a few minutes later, he's in a duster and a cowboy hat, he's got a rifle and a handgun, and he's 45, he's shooting at us. We can't make contact with him. We can't talk to him. He is just getting out of control. He's got a rifle that has an effective killing range of 800 yards. He's a good shot. He missed a couple of my officers by less than an inch. Okay, I'm sorry, we gotta stop this. We killed him. And I see this little blonde elbowing her way through all the policemen and ranting about who's in charge and demanding to speak to that person. And I looked at her and I said, I am that person. Wow! You know, and she said, you may come on.
I'm like, why did you kill him? What we knew at this point was there was a guy shooting. A, we did not know the range of the gun that he had, or that he was a very good shot, or that he was that insane at this point. I mean, he had a feather in his hat, or his gun, or something like that. And so when they said he's shooting, we figured he's shooting at the cops. They were right there. You know, it's like, I always kind of got amused at scenes where the FBI guys would show up and they'd have these big things on their back that said FBI. Why not just put a target back there? So, you know, they're shooting the cops. And no, in fact, we actually were at some danger and we were too stupid to know. We were like, well, let's get to the front of the scene and find out who the public information officer is. Had I known that, I would have just driven back to the scene. We get up there. And it was a very disturbing story because there were two little boys involved. He had two sons. And he had been stable.
Yeah.
He was clearly unstable. And they made the call, Joe made the call, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but they're not like you told me. There's a point at which it's like enough is enough, where that's enough. You're not going to have a chance to kill anybody. We've missed so far, and that's what they did. But I was like pretty aggressive about this because I wanted to know why.
That would be an understatement.
Lovely but aggressive.
I thought she was cute, so I put up with
Not everybody, but kind of cute.
We have a question here in the toward the back.
And you give some very specific details in the show about Joe's cases. How do you remember them? Or did you keep your notes? Or
No, I have to confess I did not keep my notes. Some of them I have to confess really blend. It's like anything, you know, and especially Colorado Springs is pretty Anglo-Saxon in names, and you know, a lot of times they'll just blend those names. And the thing is, I think your brain just saves you because there's a joke among reporters who will not be able to remember the case you did the day before. You probably remember it in a week, but you can't remember it the very next day. There are other things where there's just something about the case, that case and the two little boys, and how crazy the poor guy got. The Holloway case that they just stick in your heart because they're either so unusual or because there's such irony involved. I think that's why. And I would say that that's true of cases. I was all over the country. There are cases from each of those markets that I feel that way about. And every once in a while I kind of lose it on the show because something, I think this really bothers my sweetheart, but if something gets to me, I have a hard time not crying about it. She won't see. But that's the way it is.
Okay, we have another one here, Vicki from Loveland, Colorado.
Hi, Joe and Ann. Oh, sorry. My question, Joe, is were you on call 24/7?
Yep.
On the show, really?
Oh,
Were you woken up?
oh, that was the origin of the fights with the lovely and radiant Mrs. Kenda. There's an on-call status where you get the narrow blue eyes, which is something to be avoided. But if she'd say to me, let's go skiing this weekend, Well, I can't go on call. You're always on call. Let's go skiing this weekend. Well, we can't. Do I work there? Well, no, you don't. And it would go downhill from there. I was always the lilting voice on Brian Ritz's phone when I would wake him up. They'd call me first, then I'd call a team. And I'd wake everybody up.
I remember the one show where it was New Year's Eve, I think, and you had
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
My wife thought that was so funny. The show presented it as, she knows the truth. That's why she's laughing. But anyway, the show presented, we're drinking eggnog and listening to Frank Sinatra. I don't even know what eggnog looks like, let alone what it tastes. We were drinking whiskey on the rocks, and we were loaded. Loaded.
I could not hold my hat in my hand.
Yeah, exactly right. And so I drive, it's only about 6 blocks away to this murder scene. And I'm a DUI, I'm in a police car. I drive to this murder scene, and the first cop looks at me, his eyes are as big as silver dollars. I'm drunk, you know. And I took 40 bucks out of my pocket, and I said, go buy all the coffee this will buy. Yes, sir, he said, off he goes. So I go in this apartment, and I can't stand up. So I sit down next to the dead guy. He's on the sofa. Somebody shoots him in the temple and blows a skull cap into the sink, you know. He's a mess, you know. So I put my arm around him. I steady myself, you know, and even though I'm seated. And
It was not compassion, it was ballast.
It's just ballast, you know. And then my boss comes in, a police captain. He looks at the guy, looks at me, looks at the guy, looks at me. He says, which one's the dead guy? I said, you're very funny. Did anybody ever tell you that? Funny we sobered up. But yeah, on call all the time. And there are moments when you can't stop your life to be the fact that it's on call. It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake. You know, we're going to have a couple of drinks. And it never fails. It never fails when you do that, the phone rings.
I have to say too, Kathy is one of these people. Kathy comes into your house, and your house all of a sudden feels like there is an adult in the room. I mean, truly, it's fabulous. Because one of my solutions after Dan fell, I needed socialization. That 5-year-old and 7-year-old, you're off on weird nights of the week. I used to have these big dinner parties. And Joe and Kathy were frequently there. Kathy would walk in, and she'd come in, she'd say, hey, hug the kids, walk back, she'd go, this needs to be stirred. Alex set the table. Katie get the water. It's like everything was under control. Wow. The flip side is you do not want to get side-eyed from Kathy. You just go kill yourself. You're dead.
The rottest thing she ever did to me with the on-call, and follow up with your question, the phone was on my side of the bed, right? But I hadn't slept in like a week, you know, and I was gone. The phone's ringing and I don't hear it. Gotta get up and answer it. And it's 2:30 in the morning. And the dispatcher says, and this is when I was just a detective, is Detective Kenda there? No, but his partner is. You want to speak to him? There was silence on the phone. And then she says, of course he's here. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, for God's sake. My partner was a New York, Puerto Rican named Luis Velez, and he was married to a New York, Puerto Rican, you know, and Velez, the next morning he said, Joe, your wife's going to get me killed. My wife said she's going to cut my heart out. It was a joke, Luis. It was just oh my God.
Okay, we have one more here, Mike from Florida.
Hi, my question is for Ann. Ann, was there anybody specifically early in your career that you patterned your career after or inspired you to do what you did, like a Barbara Walters or someone along that line?
I can't say that there were many, many good on-air people. Many, as a matter of my hero really is Bob Schumer, who is recently retired. Bob, this is how ethical Bob is. Bob is 82, he just retired from CBS. his wife does not know what political party he belongs to.
Wow.
I mean, Bob rocks. But I had several actually really marvelous news directors who laid down the guidelines and were very constructive about it and gave me good advice. I want to know, and you're going to get mad at me about this, but I want to know if we have time for one really, really quick one. First, Jim.
Yeah, we have time for a quick one, and then we're going to close with something that Detective Larry Martin was involved in.
Okay, one quick one. Because we called to touch base, or because I've heard some horrible joke that only he will understand. And he calls last, I don't know, early this summer. And we have a, no names, we have a coworker whose wife hates us. Both.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes. How could you help?
I don't know. As Mormon fussy as we are.
But we had been to the retirement party with the coworker and the wife will not speak to either of us. Ironically, amusingly, a request winds up being sent not to Joe because she's too chicken to do this, but to Kathy for an autographed photo of Joe, which Joe kindly obliges. He doesn't know me, he's incredibly polite about this. But he calls me and he goes, "Isn't this interesting? I received a request for an autographed photograph through Cap from the lovely and radiant." And I said, "Oh, yeah. As I recall, the last time we were together at this celebration for her husband, she didn't speak to either of us." And he said, "I know. Let's kill her."
Okay, so we want to close with one special case that Detective Larry Martin was involved in, too. So a little special treat for you. You're going to see and hear a lot more from Detective Larry Martin on the last full day of the cruise. And our videographers want you to stand right in the middle so you can hold on. Okay?
Well, I was standing up there just a bit ago, and when Ann walked in, and she said, "Larry, I got something that I'd like to talk about. It was a case that you were involved in. Are you going to be up at the podium today?" I said, "No, I'm not scheduled on Thursday." She said, "Well, let's see if they will let you get up there because I want to bring something up about this particular case." And I said, "What case is that, Ann?" And she said it was the Brett Holloway case. Many of you may know that case. It just aired this past season. Brett Holloway was a deputy sheriff in Teller County, Colorado, that was dispatched to guard a arson scene. And unbeknownst to us and naturally him and everybody else involved in that case, this was a setup. The particular person who started that fire because he wanted to get police to respond. It was a very rural area in the mountains of Colorado, and he wanted to kill as many cops as he could. Unfortunately for him, fortunate for the cops, the first responders to that fire were volunteer fire department. You know, many of you that live in a rural area know that you're protected by your volunteer fires. So they responded to the scene, so he didn't have the opportunity to shoot any police officers, but he decided at that point that he would wait it out and take his time, and eventually he wanted to kill a police officer. During this whole time, he was writing a journal, and had been writing a journal for a couple of weeks about his hatred for police officers. And it all started because of his hatred for a stepfather, but he turned that hatred from a stepfather to police officers, and his plan was to kill a cop. He wrote this in his journal. He was very angry in this journal that he wrote. He waited until everybody left. Now, not only did he plan this thing out, but he also had a scanner so he could listen to the police dispatch when they dispatched officers to that scene. Well, all night long, that dispatch would call that officer that was on the scene by his call number. And just ask him if he was 10-4. Well, this killer would write in that journal, well, they just checked on K5. He's okay. And he kept talking about K5, the officer. He continues to write in there that his plan is he's going to go out of this cabin that he's broken into next door, go over the mountain, come back around, come up and kill this officer. That's exactly what he did. We get called the next morning when his body's found. They don't find him right away. And my department was called up because of the rural area. We applied, gave assistance to the smaller departments in the investigation of any major crime. So we come up and actually start an investigation of this. And right away, I recognized the seriousness of this, so I called the ATF, the FBI. Anybody, Joe? I called Joe right away. I said, I need your SWAT team. I need your lab up here. You know, we're in the middle of nowhere up here. We got lots of summer cabins. This killer could be anywhere. So naturally, Joe supplied us help, and there was tons of news people showed up. It's unusual to have something like this occur, and especially in that area where it happened, where a deputy sheriff was killed. We had satellite trucks up there, the mountain stuff. Ann was up there on the scene, and I was surprised. Somebody mentioned earlier about video footage. I helped film that show, and we're at home watching it, and I said, oh my God, there's video footage of me at the scene that I had never seen before. But Ann wanted to comment on this particular case too.
Okay, this is so weird. And the reason for my request. So I was up there with one photographer, Nigel, great little show guy, and you may remember this because you were on the road. Oh, sorry, thank you, Joe. You may remember this because you were on the road when this happened. Nigel and I, for some reason, got in there before the ATF, the FBI, anyway, I don't even know how. I think it was somebody sent us back way into the neighborhood just because that was how they knew. So we get out of, we're in a marked van. We get out of the van. Larry's car pulls up, ATF, FBI, and I believe I heard you two refer to the fact that the FBI is less than enjoys to work with often. And Nigel gets out, $40,000 camera on his shoulder. Whoever has the bloodhound, I don't know which agency.
That was the sheriff's department, yeah.
Lots it out, and of course, ATF and FBI really want to kill a reporter. That's you know, they can do whatever they want to do. They can always find a reason to make it like a reasonable thing to do. Larry's on the road. This bloodhound, Nigel has just got his camera up. These suckers were heavy. This bloodhound turns around and it's it slams him. Slams Nigel, slams the camera down in the dirt, and all these guys turn around, and literally, it was the only time in my life I've ever stopped in front of a gun. I said, do not show my photographer. In the first place, because I like him, and in the second place, because if I go back without a story, I am also without a job. So knock off! So they're like, they thought about it, and then they kind of put it down. So there were two other just bizarre parts to the story. In any situation like this, it all rolls downhill, right? So FBI dumps onto ATF, ATF dumps onto the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department has nobody left to pick on except media. And so they said to us, and the more intense it gets, the more official they become. Get off that road! Drive that van up that road! Don't get out of that van! And this is before cell phones. So we have a radio out to the station. They run us up this little bitty road next to these two cabins, and we sit there for 6 hours. And the station, which has no concept of actual reality or sense of humor, is like just melting down because they want to have a story on. They can't even get out of the van. There's an officer guarding us. And so we're sitting there, finally, I think they thought they saw the guy over the hill and sent a contingent over the hill, and we were begging this guy, please, let us just back out. We'll go away. We'll be out of your hair. Instead of quite over, we drive back 20 minutes into Colorado Springs. We get one of the major intersections of the city, which is Highway 24 and 21st Street. It's like lit up. There are flares. There are flashing lights, everything. And I said, Nigel, this cannot be happening. We've got 7 minutes to air. This guy couldn't have come this far. No. Do you know what it was? There was a Broadmoor bus. So we have an electric resort called Broadmoor. It takes a bus up to Cripple Creek. there is a crosswalk on 21st Street with a very badly timed crosswalk light. Guy in a wheelchair had been crossing, but the light did not last long enough, and a Broadmoor bus hit him, severed his head, and they couldn't find the head. And so it was an all-out search for the head, and I'm like, I feel dreadfully sorry for this human being. At this point, not that sorry. So I got out and caught my case, and they rooted us around. We got back, and we made the live shot. But I was the next morning sitting on my back porch with a cup of coffee, called a friend, and I said, I already have like about a 6-foot trophy next to me that says, weirdest day in the world.
She can fall into stuff like that. But yeah, I want to finish my part. As I mentioned a little bit about the story, and I hope most of you here have actually watched that show. At the end of that, we ended up finding him in this cabin that we were in the second floor. We go up there trying to take him into custody or kill him, and he ended up shooting himself. But I got that journal, and that journal, I was shocked when I read the anger that we saw against police officers. And in the minute he killed this officer, he comes back and writes that journal. He's a totally different person. He's talking about the officer's family. He said, oh my God, I just took this officer's life. I worried about his wife and his children, and on and on and on. And I'm thinking, you sick bastard. But I copied that journal, and I have sent copies of that journal to at least 250 police departments. Because I said, every officer in your department needs to read this journal. There's people like that in this world, and they want to kill you for no reason other than the fact that you're a police officer. And I hope that story came out in the show, and I think it did. Thank you.
All right, well, we are out of time. Thank you all for your wonderful questions, and thank you for being here, and thank you again, and Larry and Joe. All right. Thank you very much. We've got quite the afternoon planned for you. We have some interesting tidbits that you will probably be very interested in, especially about how Joe Kenda and his team, because it took the team to really work together because there's so much to do. I remember just telling Joe this the other night. There was one episode where they say, well, we interviewed 47 subjects. It's like, that took about 4.7 seconds to say, but it probably took about 47 days to get that done, because you go to the suspect's house, they're not there, okay, where are, oh, they've moved, now we have to go over there. So, I mean, it really takes a team of detectives to solve these cases. So anyway, we have the one detective, other than Joe Kenda, who's had perfect attendance at all 3 Kenda cruises. Great guy. He also, let me tell you something, this gentleman worked in undercover in the drug thing back in, there's pictures of him on Facebook with his long hair, and he looks like, oh yeah, I'm on drugs from you, I'm out. And what was really amazing is this gentleman I'm about to introduce had mandatory drug tests. So what would happen was these drug dealers would say, well, take a hit off this drug just to make sure you're not a narc. And he couldn't do that. I mean, it's like, not to literally save his life, he could not do that. It's like, my life or my job? Well, Sophie's choice. But anyway, so he would have to make up some excuse about why. It's like, oh, you've got low quality stuff there, something like that. He could talk more about it than I can. So here's the gentleman. And by the way, if you are discovered as a narc, you're not just killed swiftly with a blow to the head. You are tortured, and you are made to suffer. So this gentleman, for the sake of law enforcement, for the sake of law and order, risked his life, well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, Detective Larry Martin.
Wow, he scared me with that story. I'd like to welcome everybody here. This has been another wonderful cruise get the opportunity to meet all of you wonderful fans. Wonderful you fans. We wouldn't be having this. So we want to give a big shout out to you guys. You're wonderful. You're great to meet, and it's good talking to you. So welcome aboard. Some of you have heard me talk before because you've been on the cruises before. You're what we call our repeat offenders. But for the newer members of the cruise, I'll give a little background. I started my law enforcement career in the Army back in the early 70s, 1971. And with the idea that I wanted to make a career out of law enforcement. And so that worked out really good for me. I was stationed at Fort Carson in Colorado. That's how I got to the Colorado Springs area. Got out of the Army and eventually went to work in the law enforcement community in Colorado Springs. And stayed there. And eventually went to work at the district attorney's office as an investigator and spent 39 years there, 39 wonderful years there. I retired in July of 2013 and have just mainly been doing some work, doing a lot of research for the Homicide Hunter show and taping the shows. But just recently this last week, I got called out of retirement and asked to come back to the office to work on a homicide case that I worked in the early 1990s. It was a double homicide case where a young man, 17-year-old, or no, actually he was 15 at the time, convinced another high school buddy of his to help him kill his parents. And they did. It was an awful, brutal murder. They were both convicted and went to prison. But the son has appealed and appealed and appealed. We got a great appeal process. It was kind of, when you're in prison, you got nothing else to do but ask for appeals. And he finally was able to convince the courts in October that his attorneys, not the police, violated his rights, but the attorneys violated his rights because he wanted to testify on his own behalf. Well, the attorneys testified that that was a trial strategy. We did not want this kid taking a stand. The DA would have torn him apart. And the judge said, well, that's too bad. He had a right to testify if he wanted to. He's getting a new trial. So the district attorney called me and said, Larry, I need to talk to you. We got this case coming up, and you're the only one left that was at the crime scene that night. The coroners are dead, the detectives are dead. You were the only one there, so would you come back to work and help us put this case back together? Well, how do you say no? So last Monday I went back to work. It's going to be a part-time basis until this case is over, and I'm going to retire again because I really enjoyed playing golf in my retirement time. But a lot of people ask, how did you get involved in you work for the district attorney's office? How did you get involved in working on these homicide cases? And we have a very unique system in Colorado Springs where we work very well with our police department and other local agencies. If a homicide were to occur, and like in this particular instance I was just talking about, up in a small mountain community in Blue Park, they didn't have the manpower to have an effective detective bureau. So they would call us in to handle their major cases, and that's why I got involved in that particular case. But we work very closely with our Colorado Springs Police Department and Teller County Sheriff's Office. And one of the ideas when we first started working together was that a homicide occurred, and the police department works it. Well, eventually it's going to come to the DA's office for prosecution. But then you have to assign an attorney to it, and you have to assign an investigator to it to the DA's office, because the DA's office investigators follow up a lot of those cases, getting them prepared for court. That was a lot of work, learning that case. So we felt it was better to have our investigators on the scene of those homicides to see it from the minute that the investigation starts and follow it through. We were able to work very well with Joe Kenda and other members of the Colorado Springs Police Department. There's another lieutenant here, Brian Ritz. We worked very well with Brian. another lieutenant from the police department is with us, Cruise south of Urello, worked very well with Sal. So that worked, and I went to Cruise last year. A young lady came up to me who was a DA investigator and thought that, you know, if every DA's office in the country would be able to work that way, things would be a heck of a lot better. And I said, you're right, they would. It works well. And there would be times when we would get notified of a homicide and get called, and they said, now my squad, I had a squad of 23 investigators that worked for me. And sometimes they would say, I'd say, how many people do you need? And said, I need all of them. I need all 23. We had some major cases, a big church shooting there, active shooter, and it was 5,000 people in church when that shooting happened. And some other cases, a big apartment fire with hundreds of people were burned out of their apartments, and a couple of people were killed in that fire. So things like that, they would call us in on to assist in investigating those cases. And that's why you see me a lot on programs talking about those, because I was actually at the scene on a lot of those cases. One in particular, I think was season 1, the Gilbert Archibald case, where 5 people were murdered in Colorado Springs in one night, and that was very unusual for our city to have something like that happen. So, and Joe was the lieutenant on that case, and he decided that we needed to saturate that entire neighborhood where these crimes occurred. And because we had surveillance pictures of the killer as he was killing two young ladies at one of the convenience store. So Joe called and said, "Can I get your guys out?" "Sure, we'll get our whole team out. We'll get your team together. We'll saturate this neighborhood," and that worked. Within hours, we were able not only to identify who our killer was, but also found out exactly where he was living. And we set up to go. The plan was to take him into custody, take him to jail, but it didn't quite happen that way. Many of you may remember watching that show. He's the one that killed himself as we were trying to go in to arrest him for killing those 5 people that night. But that's just a little history of how our office and the DA's office works together. And you know, if other agencies could do that, the world would be a much better place. But I think you're starting to see that more and more, that you do have that cooperation. People realize now that you know that cooperation goes a long ways, and you need that to successfully investigate some of these cases. There was a episode this season that I'm sure you all saw. We talked a little bit about it the other day. The murder of Deputy Brett Holloway from the Teller County Sheriff's Office. As soon as I got that call and got on the scene, I realized that you know. We're going to have a huge manhunt. We're in an area, very rural area of Teller County with just a bunch of summer cabins and stuff. And he could be a killer. It could be anywhere. And I knew that I needed not only some SWAT teams up there, but I needed the lab to help me out. So I called Joe right away. I said, "Joe, I need some help. Can you send me some?" That's first off your lab. I need your lab up here right away. And then some SWAT help. They got right on that and sent their people out. And as that investigation progressed through that day and early in the next morning, we found that there was leads that led us right back to Colorado Springs. Well, we're up on the hill investigating this, so you know, you call down and you know, somebody like Joe said, "Joe, this is what we got. We found out that we've got a stolen car up here. We think the suspect might be connected to that stolen car. Can you help on that end, you know, 60 miles away, help us investigate what we've got going on up here in the city of Colorado Springs?" Well, you know, he's not going to say, "No, I don't have time to do that." He's going to get right on that. And that's the cooperation that we had, the way we worked there in El Paso County. And it was Joe and his team that figured out that the stolen car we had. Once we found out we had a stolen car and they were able to track down the owner of that car, that's how we found out who our suspect was, who our killer was. Because the car was stolen from his roommate, and his roommate had been missing for a week. So that, we had a name now, we had a picture of who it was we were looking for. But that was because of the cooperation that our two agencies had with each other. And, we had worked that way. And that ended up, as many of you saw on the episode, we found a guy living in or staying in a cabin right next door to where our crime scene was. And that's when we tried to take him out. He ended up committing suicide too. So, but I think the main point I want to make is the cooperation we had. Yeah. Oh yeah, Joe just reminded me that, and somebody brought this up the other day too. I'll give you a little bit more background on this case. This guy is a guy that wanted to kill a cop. And it all started because of his hatred for his stepfather. And for some reason, he turned a hatred for his stepfather against law enforcement. And he decided that he was going to kill a police officer. It didn't matter which police officer, he just wanted to kill a police officer. So part of the stealing this car, and at the same time he also stole a scanner, a police scanner, so we can monitor police calls. And he set up in Woodland Park, Divide actually, Colorado, to, his plan was he's going to burn a cabin down, and as the police officers arrived, he was going to start taking out police officers. Well, it didn't quite happen that way because, you know, a lot of those rural areas, you know, the first people on the scene of a fire was the volunteer fire department. And that's what happened in this case. So he actually backed off and decided that he would take his time, wait and see, but he was still going to kill a police officer. And all this time, he'd been writing in a journal and had been writing in that journal for a couple of weeks about his plans and what he's going to do and yada yada. And as he's in that cabin and he sets the fire and he watches the fire department show up, he's writing down everything that's happened in his journal. And then he realizes that as nightfall came, and we decided that we were going to wait until the morning to get an arson team in there to investigate the arson of this cabin. But we would need to leave an armed deputy on the scene to protect the crime scene, make sure nobody entered that crime scene or destroyed any evidence. Unfortunately, Brett Holloway was given an assignment to sit on that cabin throughout the evening and protect that crime scene. When he was put on that scene, his call sign was, I believe it was K5. So every 45 minutes, every 30 minutes, 45 minutes, the dispatch would call to say K5 U10-4. Yeah, K5 10-4. Well, Adam Cooper, the killer, then realized that he didn't know the deputy's name, but knew that he was K5. So he started writing down in his journal about K5. K5 was now his target, and how was he going to take this target out? And he describes how he leaves this cabin that he's in, sneaks around the mountain and comes back up through the woods, and comes up on Brent as he's setting his patrol car. It's about midnight at this time. And he just walks up to him and through an open window, shot him with a shotgun and killed him. Then reached in and stole his pistol and went back to the cabin. And if you're reading that journal up until that point, you're reading the writings of an angry individual. And that hatred for police is well documented in his journal. And you just see the hatred in this person. As soon as he got back to that cabin, he was a different person. First thing he wrote is that he had taken this K5's life, and how bad he felt about that now. He was worried about the officer's family, his wife, his kids. He's a totally different person now. But it's too late. He has taken the life of a law enforcement officer there. But he continues to write in that journal as we're investigating the scene. And he sees us out there. We don't know he's in this cabin, but he's writing down that you know, he sees what we're doing as part of this investigation and who all's there and what's going on. And finally, because of all the news coverage, a homeowner shows up and says, you know, they were concerned about their house. They had a summer cabin and they've been showing it on TV because it's right next door to the arson scene. And we said, yeah, we've been trying to locate you folks. We're trying to get into every cabin in this area to find out if the suspect may be in there or had been in there, broken in there, stole anything. So we had the homeowner come up and unlock the door, and as soon as the homeowner gets on the front porch, he comments, he said, well, that's strange. There's a window broken out, just a small window pane broken out of the door, but it's repaired from the inside with a piece of pipe. And his comment was, well, my wife must have fixed that the last time she was up here. So he unlocks the door, we go in, and he says, boy, that's strange. Somebody's been eating cereal at my table. And there was a box of cereal with a dirty bowl sitting on the table. And this is a little tiny A-frame cabin. You know what an A-frame cabin is? Just a main room, and then a ladder basically going up to two other small ones that were bedrooms. So we're standing there, and we're looking around, and he's saying, you know, there's some clothes on the floor over here that don't belong to us, and then we heard, you know what that is. And we knew then that we had somebody upstairs that didn't belong in there. We run the homeowner out, and we have a SWAT team with us. We sent two of the SWAT guys upstairs, and sure enough, our killer was upstairs and continued to write in his journal, even as we're in the house looking for him. And his last words in that journal were, you're coming for me now. And that's when we went up the ladder and kicked in his door. He was sitting in the bed and shot himself with the officer's pistol that he stole from the officer after he shot him. But, and that journal was sitting in his lap with his ballpoint pen. You know, when you look at this, you're saying, my God, what kind of people do we have in this world that would do something like this and write this journal about it? And you know, like I was trying to say, you see this person is so angry before, and now he's so remorseful that he's done this masterly deed, but it's too late. But what was terrible is right next to him on that nightstand was a check, a regular check that he had written out. And I forget the exact words, Joe. It's something about
one dead cop.
Yeah, pay to the order of one dead cop. You know, that's the kind of person that we have to deal with sometimes. Now, I got that journal I mentioned the other day. I've sent copies of that journal to about 200, 250 different police departments. Because it's important, I think, that every cop on the street needs to know there's people like that out there. They don't know you from Adam, but they want to kill you just because you were the deed. And I got lots of responses from when I sent that journal out. And training officers would contact me and tell me they made that part of their training for the rookie officers. Every officer needs to read something. But anyway, we had the cooperation of not only Joe and his troops from the Colorado Springs Police Department, but we called in the FBI and the ATF. And when a cop's killed, you get those responses. It's great to see that everybody can work together to get to the successful conclusion of a case like this.
Okay, so momentarily we will call up Lieutenant Joe Kenda to talk with, do like a duo. But before that, I think we have time for two questions, one on this side of the room and one on this side of the room, just for Larry Martin only. Does anyone over here have a question for Larry Martin? Yes, sir.
Larry, during your career on
assuming that you deal with, we'll just call mostly the rest of society. Do you ever get to the point where you think that you become so jaded that you think maybe all people are like that?
No, never. You know that, yeah, you're right. You're working with the dredges of society. But, you know, those dredges that we work with are maybe 5% of the population. 95% of the population are good, honest people. And so, no, you never get to that point where everybody's a bad guy. You just don't get there. Yeah.
Okay, do we have a question from this side of the room? This is Daryl. We'll bring you the microphone. All right, anyone back from this side of the room or the center? Okay, here we go.
Larry, in your undercover years, did you live the life 100% of undercover, or did you go home at night?
Oh no, you go home at night, but yeah, your life was pretty much you know, a secret life that you had. You know, you had to look the part. You had the long hair and the beard, but that was not really you. You know, sometimes you couldn't even let your acquaintances know that who you are, what you really did. So you know, when I was working undercover, I loved that part of my career. It was exciting. Something new was going on all the time. You're playing cat and mouse with the bad guy every day. And well, it wasn't until I came out from undercover that I realized that all my friends were the guys and gals that I worked with. That was my family. Everybody, well, and back then, everybody else was the bad guy. We were the only good guys out there. And it took some getting over that when you come out from undercover to get back to a normal life, because you're living a life of a lie all the time you're undercover.
All right, so now we're going to ask Lieutenant Joe Kenda to come up, and we'll ask Joe to say a few words about how they work together, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A if you'd like to step up.
What Larry said is true. We have an excellent working relationship with the District Attorney's Office and Fourth Judicial in El Paso County. One of the critical things that Larry would do with us is if we have an officer involved shooting, to prevent any consideration of underhandedness on our part, we would not investigate our own officer shooting. Larry Martin and his people would investigate that. We'd call them immediately. We have an officer involved shooting. Larry would take over with his own detectives, and we would assist him as he requested, but we would not interfere, nor would we participate unless there was something specific he wanted us to do. We didn't ever want the public to believe that we would somehow cover up a bad shooting or somehow prevent the truth from being learned about an officer involved in a fatal event. That was unique to us at the time. It isn't anymore so much. There's more of that around the country. When we started doing it, no one was doing it but us. And we just thought that was the appropriate thing. We wanted an impartial look at this event to make certain that everything was done correctly and everything was done in such a way that there would be no second guessing on anyone's part as to the officer's motivation or his innocence or his guilt. So that was very important, and it became a model for a lot of agencies around the West and then eventually around the country to adopt that same principle. But we, as far as I know, we were the first ones to ever do it, all right? Yeah, so good for us, you know? So we always work together because, you know, the ultimate test of a murder investigation is court. And Larry's people would prepare the case for prosecution. And what I mean by that was that if the prosecutor, the district attorney assigned, the deputy district attorney assigned to prosecute the case, had any questions that were not answered in the report, and one of Larry's investigators would go out and attempt to answer them. Or if he saw a defense argument that may come forward He'd assign his investigators to look into that particular issue. So it was always a group effort in all these cases to put our best product forward to the actual jury, for them to be able to say, okay, I see, I understand why this all happened. So it's always been a group effort, but we always thought that the police shooting thing was very important to be handled independently. So that's what we did. Now, who has a question?
Raise your hand. We have one over here to your left, gentlemen.
Going by TV, how important is the first 48 hours of an investigation?
Well, my honest opinion about that, people that say that, it's an excuse for unwillingness to work hard. Yeah, they say, well, if we don't get to work all day, man, boy, I don't know. What's the matter? You want to go to dinner? You know, you're playing golf tomorrow. I've never believed that to be true. I know they say that. They, with the mysterious they always say that. But personally, I think it's bullshit. It takes how long it takes. All right? You don't give up. I had a case that was 9 years from start to finish. 9 years. Drove me crazy. Okay? I had a new detective in my unit. This is a funny story. New detective comes in and he's going to work, homicide. We were about 5 years into that case, and I gave him a lead on the Eric Stanley Houston case. That was the case. And the kid says, well, that's that guy in the motel on the west side. Yeah. Well, nobody cares about him. And the older guys in the unit all turned away like, oh boy. He said that, you know. And I turned white. And I said, don't you ever, ever say that to me again. Never. Okay? If you think we don't care about these people, then you're going to be at the airport writing tickets from midnight to 8 with Tuesdays and Thursdays off. Now, you read me? Yes, sir. Now go work that leave. Yes, sir. You know, so he learned a lesson. You don't give up. 48 hours doesn't mean anything, except it's 48 hours. So then it's 72, then it's 96. I mean, please, it's what. I don't know how long it's going to take. It takes as long as it takes. Sometimes you can do it very quickly. If it's a domestic homicide, the husband is present at the scene and can't wait to tell you how he finally ended that no-good wife of his life, That in the business is referred to as a grounder. Because you hit a ground ball to the shortstop and you throw him out at first, you're out. So the grounder homicides, okay, they're paperwork, but they happen very quickly. You solve it in an hour. Others, maybe not, So I think 48 hours is nonsense, my personal opinion.
Joe, in some of the movies that we've done, being an actor, so many people have asked me, Gerald, do they have to get permission to do these movies and these episodes? Do they have to, get whatever the permission is, whether it be a legal aspect or from a family member or a friend or living relative? And if you do have to get permission, does any of these people ever come back to question you or say, you didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right, or I'm going to get you, that kind of thing. But I've been asked that, and I didn't know what to say, I guess they do, but under the Freedom of Information Act, I know we can do a lot of things, but as an actor, there's going to be something somebody asks me, so I have to pass that on.
Anytime we do any of these episodes, we get a hold of the family, let them know. We would never want any family member to watch TV one night and see a story about their loved one on TV. So yeah, the families are contacted, and a lot of times they're asked to come in and go on camera. A majority of the times they don't want to, but you'll see in some of our episodes that they do come on. But yeah, we would never show an episode or film an episode without letting the family know that we were doing this. And not only just the victim's family, suspect's family, you let them know that this is going on and give them an opportunity to maybe talk.
The legal side of it is that the Colorado has an Open Records Act, which means that anybody can walk into a police department and buy a copy of a homicide report if the case has been adjudicated and the person responsible is in prison. Anybody can buy them. Networks buy them 60 at a clip, and they read them and decide which ones they like, and they ask us, what about this one? And it proceeds from there. There has never been a complaint raised by a family member about a presentation we've done. We explained to the family in advance, as well as other participants, that this is a 1-hour television show. You cannot present, for example, 9 years of work in an hour. So you use the highlights of the investigation, and you present those so that a perfect stranger can watch the program and understand how we got from the discovery of human remains to a courtroom. Do we include every fact of that case? Absolutely not. We cannot, in time allowed. We do a basic overview of the case. Have people complain to us? Not that I've ever been aware of. When I worked, and when Larry now is working again, I was laughing at him this morning about the fact that he's now working again, but cops are merciless, you know. I was threatened 100 times a week, so was he. They're going to kill me, my wife, my dog, my kids. I mean, it never stops, you know. That's the way it is. The show has not produced that kind of hatred, at least not yet. I would think after 7 years, if it was going to, it would. Anybody else?
Over here about your 11 o'clock position.
I don't know if you've been asked this before, but if you have worked the John Bonet case, do you feel you could have solved it? And who do you think killed that little girl?
Well, as it turns out, I will answer it this way for you. Fatal investigative errors were made by the Boulder Police Department at the outset of that investigation. And despite everybody's fascination and the fact that the press just won't leave it alone, that case will never see the inside of a courtroom. It is unprosecutable. They couldn't take that to court with a confession. I don't know the facts of the case. I was approached by the Boulder PD to take the investigation over. My only question to the chief at that time was, are the press accounts of what you've done so far accurate? His response was, yes, they are. I said, you are doomed. And they're going to fire you, and the next time you have an election, they're going to eliminate your district attorney if both of those things happen. The press finds it fascinating because the Ramsey family put the fun back in dysfunctional. You don't dress up. Most people teach a 5-year-old kid how to ride a bike. You don't dress her up like a whore and have her parade around the stage to relive your mother's youth. All right? That's why they find that to be fascinating. The sad part is that girl is in the grave and nobody's going to pay the price. Period. The end. Anybody else? Over here.
By the way, I read your book throughout this cruise, so a lot of things are clearer and I enjoy it. I just had a question about lie detector tests, and I know you always thought they were a tool, but I still am curious, have you found throughout your careers that sometimes people that are innocent fail those?
Of course.
Because I wonder about somebody like
Oh,
yourself.
of course.
Okay.
Polygraph, lie detector test, however you want to call it, is not admissible in a court of law. It's not admissible because it has no scientific basis. In fact, now if you're a polygraphist, an operator of a lie detector, you drank the Kool-Aid when you went to polygraph school, and you believe that this is, by God, the way to find out if somebody's telling the truth or not, and that is 100% horseshit. That is a Ouija board with an extension cord. That's what it is. You can fail one, you can pass one, you can do whatever you want, and none of it is useful in any way. The only thing that makes it useful is if you are so convinced, you the perpetrator, that this thing will actually work, that this machine that they're going to sit down in front of is going to tell that they're lying or whatever, and they become frightened by it and they make a statement. You say to the guy, you realize this machine was designed by the government, that's a pretty amazing thing. Really? So he believes you. if he believes this thing will actually do something, he may confess to you willingly, just because he figures he's toast, because now you've got this machine. If you're going to rely on this machine, you've got a big problem, because it's unusable. It's not even useful in any way at all. Now, polygraphists hate me when I say these things. However, I can give you one example after another of guilty people who passed them and innocent people who failed them. The human mind is an extremely complicated piece of machinery and cannot be analyzed by an electronic device, period. No matter what anybody says, no matter how many glasses of Kool-Aid they drank when they went to polygraph school, it ain't happening. That's why in a courtroom, they're absolutely inadmissible. You say polygraph, they say mistrial, okay? That's the next word out of somebody's mouth is mistrial. They're just not reliable. They're not. Everyone says they are, but they're not.
With the horrific things that you both have seen throughout your careers, how do you process and deal with the psychological stress and sleep at night?
My answer is easy. I don't sleep at night. I never have. Remember the Bruce Willis movie, I See Dead People? Well, I really do.
Well, and I'll tell you, with me, you know, as a cop, you don't talk a lot about, you know, what you're going through with attorney and whatnot, but I'll tell you what, I have found, since I've been involved in this show, that it's been very therapeutic for me. Some of the things that I've been able to talk about, that I never talked about before, I can freely talk about those things, and it actually makes me feel a lot better. So this show has been very therapeutic.
I will echo that. It is true. You know, that right now in the modern day, we refer to stress as PTSD. In World War I, they called it shell shock, but that sounded a little harsh. So then in World War II, they called it battle fatigue. That sounded better somehow. And now we call it PTSD, which now sounds like we're really smart. And it really, what it is, you know, it's like shell shock. It's all semantics. It's all bullshit, you know, but this show has been therapeutic for me as well. There are many times when I've said more things to that camera than I've ever said to my wife. I never wanted to say those things before, but it's been a healthy thing that I have. So my motivation to do this program is to make me feel better. Because it does. And nothing else ever has. So the show is my...
Larry, we spoke about this briefly a couple days ago, but I'll address both of you. Without getting political, what do you feel about, we'll just say, the attorneys getting involved with what the police can and cannot do today?
Let me put it to you this way. I think Larry would agree with me, all right? I have respect for attorneys, I do, both defense and prosecution. Who I don't have respect for are people who press the envelope of the rules because they want to be viewed as clever, or they're willing to circumvent the rules to achieve their end. Be that a policeman, a prosecutor, a defense attorney, or a judge. If you fall within the rules of the system, I have no issue with you. You're a defense attorney, that's your job, to defend and provide a vigorous defense for this person. When we revolted against George III, we designed a system that you are innocent until proven guilty. In the British system, you are guilty until you are proven innocent. We didn't think that was appropriate, and that is correct. The system we have works extremely well. Are there mistakes? Of course, people run the system. The difficulty is humans are in charge. If we could just get those robots to work, I'm telling you, things would be perfect. But nothing is perfect, okay? But I think Larry would agree that we both object to anybody who presses the envelope of the rules for their own purposes. And there are those that do, as they would in any occupational group. You find bad actors in any group of people. That includes doctors, priests, ministers, and there you go. Same thing with lawyers, same thing with all of that. The system is designed to prevent the vigorous prosecution of an innocent person. Okay? So that's what it's for. If you're willing to step outside the lines, then that's another matter entirely. Then you yourself are committing a crime. So that's my answer. Do you agree?
We have a
Go ahead.
Okay, we have another question.
Larry, how did you ever possibly manage to be working undercover at the same time you lived a normal life? I mean, did you go out with your family to the movies? Did you go shopping with them? How did you not get caught?
Yeah, you still had to live your normal life, but you were very cautious in doing that. You didn't want to do anything that would naturally get your family hurt. But when you're working undercover, there's a lot of things you don't do that a normal family would do, like perhaps going to the movie or going to a restaurant. If you did those things, you were very cautious in doing it, but you didn't do it a lot. You know, at the time, Colorado Springs wasn't, that big of a town, not like it is now. And you darn sure didn't want to be out, even at the mall with your family and running to somebody that you're buying dope from, So yeah, you just had to be very cautious, and it did affect your personal life.
Well, on a lighter note, Lieutenant Joe, how was it filming the commercial with The Rock, Kevin Hart, and Jack Black? It was the funniest commercial I've ever seen.
That was great. We had a great time. We had an absolutely great time. Kathy went with me. We were at Sony Pictures in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta's become Hollywood East, pretty much. They've got 9 sound stages there. And they had created a jungle in one of the sound stages, potted trees, real plant life, potted trees and so on. Had an animal trainer that had 2 20-foot pythons and scorpions and all sorts of things. And my wife's an animal freak, so she was playing with the snakes and playing with the scorpions. She had pictures of her with a scorpion in her hand, And Johnson is a very, very bright, articulate, pleasant man. Jack Black is the same and very funny. Kevin Hart is about as short as this podium, the small side of the podium, but he's a really nice guy, little bitty guy. And we had a great time. It was great fun. We played around with the script a little bit, and we kind of ad-libbed the bit that we did, as opposed to what they had in the script, because we thought what we came up with was funnier. And then when they filmed it, they did it in one take, and they said, "That is great," So that's what it was. So we just did it. So it worked out pretty well. The thing that surprised me the most is Johnson said to me that he watches the show, and I thought he was just being nice, That's what I'd say, if I was him, And then when you do filming, you stand in your position, you get your mark, and you stay in your mark. And then they check lighting, and they check the cameras, and that takes a while. So when they put us on our marks in this jungle, Johnson's 2 inches away from my shoulder, and Black's 2 inches away from this shoulder, there you stand for like an hour, so nothing else to do but yap to each other, So Johnson mentioned he liked the show, and then while we're talking, he said he brought up one of the episodes. He really does watch it. It really surprised me. But we had a wonderful, Kathy loved it. We were down there for 5 days, so we went to the zoo, we went to the aquarium in Atlanta, we hung out. That's the nice thing about travel involving the network. We're staying at the Four Seasons downtown, and pretty slick deal. Not too bad for a cop and a nurse, you know what I mean? That's right, it was a blast.
Over here at about your 10 o'clock, right here.
Have either of you ever been betrayed by one of your own officers? And if so, what was that like?
Betrayed how?
A corrupt officer.
No, I've arrested a couple of policemen for crimes, but no corruption. Now, we're in the West. We're not too bright, but we're honest. You don't have that endemic level of corruption you have in some cities that have been around for 200 years. You know, that's not true in the West. We have policemen who committed felonies. They get arrested and prosecuted for it. We have to recruit our members from the ranks of the human race. On occasion, we make a mistake. But we try to identify those mistakes, and when they become clear to us, we do something about it. But corruption? No. Never happened. It was always unfortunate if I had to arrest a policeman. I was the commander of major crimes, and Internal Affairs used me as their enforcement arm, you know, so if I was around and I was by myself, people were nervous if I could see here because Internal Affairs, sent him over here, you know, and I went into a substation one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just wanted to use a computer, you know, it was working. And I walk in the door and everybody jumps at the desk, you know, because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and, oh, hi, Lieutenant. Hey guys, you know, I just want to use a computer. Oh, I said, what's the matter? Guilty conscience, boys. It was pretty fun. But I have had to arrest people, and that's not a pleasant thing, but it's part of the deal. I was in a locker room one night on the west side at midnight, and a cop came to work and in the locker room, and everybody's looking at me because I'm in this locker room. And he walks in and says, you got a gun on you? Yeah. Take it out, put it on that bench. Slowly. And everybody else said, oh, shit. And he does, and I arrested him for sexual assault on a child. And you can hear a pin drop in the locker room. So, not pleasant. But corruption,
12 o'clock, Kenda. Detective Kenda, actually two-part. What would you say the percentage breakdown in your experience as men assailants as opposed to women? And were there any women assailants that stuck out in your mind over the years where you just scratched your head?
Okay. The predominant violent member of society is a male. There are women who commit violent acts, but they're extremely rare. I would say 95.5 percentage-wise. Very unusual for a woman to commit a violent crime. When you do encounter a woman who commits a violent crime, it's always surprising, and it's always, in some ways, a little scary because they are very, very cold. Who hunts in nature? The female hunts. The male lion awaits the lioness is the one that goes out and kills, you know. On the occasion when I've had a woman, there was absolutely no remorse. They made a decision and they carried it out. In males, you often see remorse. And the few occasions I had females, there was no remorse.
Jennifer Ray?
Oh, yeah. You know, have a girl who conspires with her married boyfriend to kill his wife. She's also married with 2 kids. She kills her, hits her in the shoulder with the first shot, knocks her down, gets down on her knees, puts a pass-through shot through her chest. Contact. Cold. Cold.
We have a question right straight ahead. I used to work in a hotel in Northern Virginia where we had a lot of people staying with us that were in the witness protection program. I was wondering if you had put a lot of your witnesses into the protection program.
A few, but not many. Some, not many. that's a difficult thing to get into unless you are usually involved in major narcotics operations or organized crime of some sort. We did have two occasions I can think of when they applied. We got the feds to apply to the Witness Protection Program, and they only took one of the other one they didn't take.
When I worked a case, and it was an organized crime case, and I had a young lady who was giving me information on that case, and we had to put her in a Witness Protection Program. She was only 17 years old, but we knew she was in danger, so we put her in a program. 6 months later, she shows up in my office. I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" She didn't like where she was at. She missed her family, and she felt that she was going to be okay. I said, "Tracy, you're not going to be okay. These people mean business." She thought she knew better and decided she was going to stay there in Colorado Springs, and she was there 3 weeks. And her mother calls her. She's missing. I had her mother file a missing persons complaint. We started investigating it right away. That was on a Saturday. We had Mom make the report on Monday. Joe called me, and he said, "Larry, we've got a report of a body that was found in Greeley, Colorado, which is way north of Colorado Springs, north of Denver." And he says the clothing description fits that of your informant that went missing. So I asked Joe, I said, "Can you have them send a copy of her fingerprints down?" And they did. And we went over, and I had my chief at the time, Otis Kirkbride, look at those fingerprints, and he looked at me and he said, "It's her." She would not stay in that program. She should have stayed in that program. If she did, I would hope she would be alive today.
The Federal Witness Protection Program has never lost anyone. They've never lost or had anybody killed that was in the program. What happens is, Tracy happens. They get annoyed. They miss their criminal life. They miss their family. They miss their criminal associates. They miss their boyfriend. And they leave the program voluntarily and are dead within a month. Enemies like that don't go away. They don't go away. And that girl, you know, "I'll be okay." No, you won't. And she wasn't.
We have a question here.
When the two of you met, was there an instant rapport? You just sort of clicked and knew this was going to be a good relationship, or did that just come over time?
I said, "Oh my God. I got to work with him?"
I said, "You mean that cowboy, that bull rider? Oh, shit."
Actually, because we worked in two different departments, you know, we weren't really working together, but at one point, my boss asked me to do another semi-undercover job that would assign me back to the police department, and Joe would be my boss. And that was in what we call TRAC. It was a unit for total resources against career criminals. So yeah, I finally did have to go over and work for him, but it worked out well.
We did okay. We did okay.
Over here to your left.
Obviously, you guys have about 400 friends on this boat. People that I'm sure you call some of your best friends and family. Now, just last week, I know there was an officer killed in Thornton, Colorado. That's about an hour from us, and it's